Nobody wants a plane full of paparazzi, but what if a whole country says, "You're not welcome"? Imagine being rich, famous, and powerful, yet your passport suddenly means nothing at the border. From pop icons to Hollywood legends, some of the world's most recognizable stars have found themselves locked out of entire nations, sometimes for shocking reasons you wouldn't believe. Today, we're counting down the top 5 celebs who were officially blocked, banned, or blacklisted from foreign countries and the wild stories behind their exile. Was it for breaking laws, offending culture, or daring to speak out politically? You'll soon find out. And trust me, number 2 will leave your jaw on the floor. From global superstars losing millions in canceled tours to actors punished for their beliefs, these bans aren't just rumors. They're real, documented, and in some cases, still active today. Which celebrity's entire career took a hit because of a single photo? Which one became a political enemy overnight? Stay tuned, because we're about to uncover the untold stories behind fame, fallout, and forbidden borders. Before we begin, hit like if you love celeb drama, subscribe for weekly deep dives, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next countdown. It's hard to imagine a modern pop world without him. From baby to sold-out world tours, Bieber has been everywhere. But back in 2017, one of the largest nations on earth said, "Not here." That year, China's Culture Bureau publicly announced that Justin Bieber was not welcome to perform in the country. The statement didn't come from gossip blogs or tabloids. It came straight from a government department. Their reasoning? They cited Bieber's, quote, "bad behavior," both on and off the stage, saying he was not a suitable performer for Chinese audiences until he, quote, "matures." This wasn't just a small slap on the wrist. For any artist, being banned from China is a massive deal. We're talking about one of the biggest music markets in the world. Fans in Beijing and Shanghai were heartbroken when his Purpose World Tour skipped their cities completely. Promoters lost money, fans flooded social media, begging for reconsideration. But officials stood firm. The reason wasn't entirely random. Around that time, Bieber's image was under intense scrutiny. Remember those years of reckless headlines, racing cars through Miami, on-stage meltdowns, and that infamous incident where he was photographed spraying graffiti in Brazil? Every controversy added fuel to the global perception that Bieber was spiraling out of control, and China decided they didn't want to import that kind of chaos. But underneath the drama, there was something deeper. China's decision reflected how carefully it curates what kind of Western culture enters its borders. In their official statement, they even said they wanted to purify the entertainment industry, making an example out of one of the biggest Western pop idols alive. It was a warning to others, too. Fame doesn't buy you entry everywhere. Bieber later tried to move past that era. He cleaned up his image, got married, and started releasing more mature, introspective music. But as of now, China has never publicly lifted that ban. And that raises the question, when a government bans an artist for behavior rather than politics, how long does forgiveness take? Years? Decades? Or never at all? Losing access to China meant millions in potential tour revenue, countless sponsorship deals off the table, and an entire fan base locked out overnight. But for Bieber, it also became a wake-up call, a reminder that fame can't always smooth over a rough reputation. And if even he can get banned from one of the world's biggest stages, imagine who's next. Number 4, Miley Cyrus. Before the tattoos, the bold reinventions, and the superstar stage presence, Miley was America's sweetheart, the Disney darling that kids adored. But in 2009, one casual photo would turn into an international scandal that followed her for years and even got her banned from an entire country. The photo, taken during a night out with friends, showed Miley pulling her eyes back, in a gesture that many interpreted as mocking Asian features. It was meant, she said later, as a joke, but it didn't land that way. The picture quickly spread online, sparking outrage across Asian communities and making headlines worldwide. In China, the reaction was especially fierce. National media outlets condemned the photo as racially insensitive, and the country's authorities, already cautious about which Western celebrities they endorse, responded by quietly blacklisting Miley. Overnight, she went from Disney princess to persona non grata in one of the most influential entertainment markets on Earth. It might sound like an overreaction, but in a place where celebrity culture intertwines with national image, every move is political. At the time, China was tightening its control over foreign media and cultural imports. Miley's image, once clean and family-friendly, had suddenly become a symbol of Western disrespect. Chinese entertainment outlets stopped mentioning her. Promoters were told not to book her for concerts or interviews. Even streaming her music faced quiet restrictions. For a global pop star, being blacklisted from China meant losing access to over 1 billion potential fans. A career wound that doesn't easily heal. Miley later apologized, saying she never intended to offend anyone and that the photo was taken out of context. But by then, the damage was done. Her name had been added to a growing list of celebrities China considered problematic, a list that already included stars for everything from political comments to public behavior. And for Miley, this wasn't just about a bad picture. It marked a turning point. She began leaning harder into her rebellious image, shedding her Disney persona and becoming the unapologetic artist we know today. Ironically, the scandal that shut her out of one of the world's biggest markets also freed her creatively, pushing her to stop caring about public approval altogether. But it's a sobering lesson. Fame gives you power, but it also magnifies every misstep. One photo, 1 second of thoughtless behavior can become an international incident. And for Miley, that moment changed how the world saw her and how entire governments decided whether she belonged. While the controversy eventually cooled down, the ban itself was never officially lifted. Even today, her name remains quietly sidelined in Chinese entertainment circles. And that makes you wonder, when it comes to global fame, is any apology ever enough to erase the past? Number 3, Jay-Z. When you think of global hip-hop icons, Jay-Z's name is right there at the top. He's a business mogul, a lyrical genius, and one of the few artists to transform rap into global high art. But even legends aren't untouchable, especially when their lyrics collide with cultural boundaries. In 2006, Jay-Z was scheduled to perform in Shanghai, an event hyped as a historic first for Chinese hip-hop fans. But just days before the show, the entire performance was suddenly canceled. The official reason? Chinese authorities said that some of Jay-Z's lyrics contained too much vulgar language and were not appropriate for younger audiences. In short, the government decided he was too explicit for their stage. This wasn't just a last-minute misunderstanding. It was part of a broader cultural policy. China's Ministry of Culture tightly regulates all imported entertainment. Songs referencing drugs, violence, or sexuality are often deemed incompatible with the country's moral standards. Jay-Z's music, raw, honest, and deeply rooted in the struggles of urban America, didn't fit the sanitized image the authorities wanted to project. So, the show was pulled. Promoters were forced to refund tickets. Fans were crushed, and Jay-Z himself never got the chance to perform on a Chinese stage again. For Jay-Z, This was more than a single canceled concert. It was a wake-up call about the invisible borders that fame can't cross. His lyrics, which millions saw as poetic reflections of street reality, were interpreted as corrupting influences by a foreign government. And that's the paradox of global stardom. What makes an artist powerful in one culture can make them unacceptable in another. Even after the ban, Chinese fans found ways to connect with his music through underground channels and digital platforms. They traded CDs, shared MP3s, and translated his lyrics, spreading his message in spite of official restrictions. It was proof that cultural power can't always be contained by political walls. But from the government's point of view, Jay-Z represented a type of Western influence they wanted to filter, a sound too real, too rebellious, too Western. It's fascinating, because Jay-Z's message was never about rebellion for its own sake. His music spoke about survival, ambition, and rising from poverty to power, themes that resonate worldwide. Yet, when placed against China's cultural policy, even his success story became too controversial. He was never officially declared banned for life, but no official invitation ever came again. His absence from Chinese stages speaks volumes, a silent, ongoing exile of one of hip-hop's greatest voices. In the end, Jay-Z's case revealed something deeper, that cultural censorship isn't always about offense. Sometimes it's about control. Who gets to tell their story and where? In Jay-Z's world, music is freedom. But in the eyes of strict authorities, that same freedom can look like rebellion. Number 2, Richard Gere. For decades, Richard Gere was the embodiment of Hollywood charm, the suave leading man who defined an era. From American Gigolo to Pretty Woman, he was adored worldwide. But while many stars carefully avoid political controversy, Gere took the opposite route, and it cost him an entire country. His story isn't about scandal, crime, or bad behavior. It's about conviction and how one man's conscience collided with one of the world's most powerful governments. Richard Gere's spiritual journey began long before his activism. Deeply influenced by Buddhism, he became a devoted supporter of the Dalai Lama and an outspoken advocate for Tibet's independence from China. But that advocacy didn't sit well with Beijing. The Chinese government has long considered Tibet an inseparable part of its territory. Any challenge to that claim is seen as a direct political threat. The tipping point came in 1993. During a live broadcast at the Academy Awards, Gere went off script and used his platform to condemn China's occupation of Tibet. He called for peace, for compassion, but in China's eyes, he had crossed an unforgivable line. Almost overnight, Gere became persona non grata. His films were quietly banned from Chinese theaters, his name blacklisted in entertainment circles, and any movie associated with him was viewed as a liability for international release. This wasn't just symbolic. As China's box office began to rival Hollywood's in the 2000s, being banned from China meant major studios had to make a choice: work with Gere and risk losing millions, or cut ties to keep access to the Chinese market. Many chose the latter. Gere himself admitted in interviews that he was quietly uninvited from roles because financiers didn't want to anger Chinese officials. Imagine that, one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces suddenly finding doors closed, not because of scandal, but because of politics. But Gere never backed down. He doubled down on his humanitarian work, founding the Gere Foundation to promote human rights in Tibet and supporting global causes related to refugees and HIV/AIDS awareness. He made it clear he wouldn't apologize for speaking his truth, even if it meant sacrificing career opportunities. For Beijing, however, the punishment remained. He was and still is banned from entering China, from filming there, and from appearing in any Chinese co-productions. His name is, in many ways, erased from that market entirely. His case became one of the most famous examples of political blacklisting in Hollywood. While others were banned for personal behavior, Gere was banned for his beliefs. And that made his exile even more powerful. It wasn't about protecting image or morality. It was about silencing dissent. And yet Richard Gere remains calm when he talks about it. He said in interviews that the loss of box office revenue or fame doesn't matter because his activism is about something bigger than Hollywood. In a world where celebrities often shy away from controversy to protect their brands, Gere's story stands out as a reminder. Taking a stand can come with a price, but sometimes that price is worth paying. To this day, Richard Gere's ban has never been lifted. His face, his films, and his name remain largely unseen in China, a quiet but powerful example of what happens when celebrity meets politics. And that brings us to our final case, the most recent and perhaps the most politically charged of all. And at number 1, Ben Stiller. The world knows him as a comedic genius. From Zoolander to Night at the Museum, Ben Stiller built a career making people laugh. But in 2022, the laughter stopped, at least in one part of the world. That year, Stiller found his name on an official list of Americans banned from entering Russia. But unlike some celebrity bans sparked by bad behavior or cultural offense, this one was rooted in something entirely different: politics. In June 2022, just months after the war in Ukraine began, Ben Stiller traveled to Poland and Ukraine as a goodwill ambassador for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. He met with displaced families, visited refugee camps, and even sat down with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv. During the meeting, he called Zelensky his hero, a small gesture that made global headlines. But in Moscow, it didn't go unnoticed. 3 months later, Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs released an official list banning dozens of American public figures from entering the country, a retaliatory response to Western sanctions. Among them, U.S. senators, officials, journalists, and Ben Stiller. For Russia, this was a symbolic move, a message to the world that criticism of its actions would not be tolerated. For Stiller, it was personal proof that standing up for humanity sometimes comes with consequences. He wasn't alone, either. Actor Sean Penn, another vocal supporter of Ukraine, was also banned. Both men had publicly condemned the invasion and used their fame to bring global attention to the refugee crisis. And while some shrugged it off as a political stunt, the gesture carried real diplomatic weight. It officially placed Ben Stiller, a man best known for comedy and kindness, on the same list as individuals Moscow considered national threats. But here's what makes his story remarkable. Stiller didn't back down or apologize. He didn't try to smooth it over for the sake of his career. Instead, he stood firm, continuing his humanitarian work with the UN, traveling to other crisis zones, and reminding the public that celebrity can be a powerful tool for awareness, even when it invites backlash. Russia's ban wasn't about music, morality, or entertainment. It was about influence. Celebrities like Stiller reach millions, shaping how the world sees conflict, compassion, and justice. And that's what made him dangerous, at least in the eyes of the Kremlin. And that's what ties all these stories together. Whether it's a pop star's wild night, an actor's outspoken moment, or a comedian's humanitarian trip, fame has no borders, but every border has its rules. These 5 celebrities didn't set out to cause international incidents, yet their actions, words, or reputations led to consequences that reached far beyond Hollywood. It's a reminder that in today's global culture, every camera flash and every public statement travels further than ever before. Sometimes being banned isn't about rebellion, it's about resonance. So, which of these bans shocked you the most? And do you think any of them deserved it? Or were they just victims of fame colliding with politics? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next week for another deep dive into the hidden side of celebrity life.